Biggest lie of the year, squad member Democrat Jamal Bowman claims he pulled the fire alarm, not understanding that it would cause a fire alarm in the congressional building. It doesn't pass the stink test, but what does these days? And number three, well, to absolutely no one's surprise, the House and Senate worked into the weekend, into the wee hours, so they could pass another terrible stopgap spending bill that continues to bankrupt America and mortgage the future of generations to come. $33 trillion in debt and counting. And nobody seems to care. This, by the way, is exactly what I predicted would happen. No government shutdown, just another IOU to our kids and grandkids. And the spotlight now is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who's among a small group of Republicans that killed an earlier budget deal that would have cut spending by 8% for a month and added some security measures at the southern border. And now in the wake of the latest continuing resolution, which was far worse, he's calling for Kevin McCarthy to be removed as Speaker of the House, but he may have overplayed his hand. I believe Gaetz is right about having 12 separate appropriations bills to run the government, but he wasn't going to force that to happen by the end of the fiscal year this year on September 30th, which was Saturday. It seems to me his constituents in the nation would have been better served going with the first bill instead of going with brinkmanship that ultimately failed. Well, now Gaetz has become the target of angry Republicans that are tired of his grandstanding, caterwauling approach to politics. And they're now preparing a motion to have him expelled from Congress altogether. Of course, that has nothing to do with calling for McCarthy's head, at least not directly, but it is directly tied to an ethics investigation into his behavior and a pending report. According to one report, there are Republicans behind the scenes that cannot stand him and say he's a very smart guy who has no morals. So if the ethics report that is almost complete comes back with findings of guilt, he may well get booted from the chamber. It takes a 2/3 majority to do that, and with Gaetz not making many friends lately, well, that could certainly happen. Again, I agree with this point on 12 bills, all to be debated separately and voted on separately, but we're not there yet, and haven't been since the 1990s. And of course, every Democrat would vote to expel him as they're dealing with their own problems involving Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey and his pending bribery and corruption charges, felonies that were recently unveiled. Ah, yes, Washington is such a nice place this time of the year. Fall is in the air, and so is the smell of the rotting institutions and the very flawed people that work there. Yes, the swamp is deep, dark, and dank, but what do you expect from these people anyways? High standards? Please. For the Republicans, this is a tough spot. The House is down to 433 members currently. The GOP margin, razor thin. And George Santos of New York is already facing federal charges for his charade to get elected in 2022. So if two more Republicans were removed, Gaetz and Santos, the margin is something like 2 votes. 2, just 2. And on Sunday, McCarthy told ABC this is a personal matter with Gaetz, targeting him. That's his opinion. But Matt Gaetz insists the call for Kevin McCarthy to be removed is not personal. But on ABC, it sounded like it certainly is, with Jonathan Carl asking the questions. Sounds that way to me, too. Listen for yourself.
This isn't personal. Some people make policy disagreements personal because their own policy failures are so personally embarrassing to them. I hold no personal animus to with any of my Republican colleagues. By the way, including my Republican colleague you're about to have on next, who's had some pretty terse words for me. But at the end of the day, this is about spending. This is about the deal Kevin made in January. I do resent the fact that Kevin is owned by lobbyists and special interests.
That sounds personal, by the way.
No, it's not personal. It's substantive.
That's an attack on the guy's integrity.
Well, it is an attack on the system that he has used to obtain the speakership. I am fighting for a different system, one based on spending guardrails, agreements on process. Kevin promised us 72 hours to read the bill. We didn't have it. He promised us $100 million wouldn't go onto the suspension agenda without the opportunity for amendments. Broke that deal too, and he promised us we'd return to pre-COVID spending levels. There is almost no promise he hasn't violated.
So there you have it. Laying out a strong case says it's not personal, seemed personal to me. And with the newly minted continuing resolution signed by Joe Biden over the weekend, Gaetz has plenty of ammunition, but it looks like it might be his own political demise that comes from this current mess, and it's not a good place for the Republican Party to be right now either. Gaetz said McCarthy's real partner is not the conservatives or the Republicans, but the far-left Democrats who he makes all his deals with. Here's what he said.
All right, I want you to listen to what Hakeem Jeffries said after the
Kevin's new boss. Let's hear from him.
Listen.
It was a victory for the American people and a complete and total surrender by right-wing extremists who throughout the year have tried to hijack the Congress.
I guess you agree with part of that. You agree it was a total surrender?
No, it wasn't a surrender by the MAGA wing. We lost. A defeat is not a surrender. There were 90 Republicans who voted against this bad deal, and we did not prevail because here's what I've observed in the 118th Congress. On matters of frivolity or messaging bills, Kevin McCarthy is fine partnering with House conservatives. But whenever it comes to the money, right, the debt limit, the budget process, Kevin McCarthy's true coalition partner is Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah, is Hakeem Jeffries. That's his partner. Now, the ethics probe that has Gates in peril began in 2021. It involves a host of issues, including campaign finance reform questions, taking bribes, using illicit drugs, and accusations of hooking up with an underage girl, taking her across state lines, all of which he denies, of course. But like I said, he is not popular on the Hill right now. He's not. No matter how you slice it, he is not. And Republican New York Congressman Mike Lawler calls Matt Gaetz' effort to unseat Kevin McCarthy destructive to this nation. Here's what he said.
What's your message to Hakeem Jeffries and your Democratic colleagues on this? Because if they vote with Matt Gaetz, and Gaetz only needs to have a handful of Republicans, and he can remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So what's your message to Democrats about whether or not to go along with that?
Look, ultimately, Democrats are going to make a decision for themselves. I think it is destructive to the country to put forth this motion to vacate. We have a lot of work to do. The American people elected a House Republican majority to serve as a check and balance on the Biden agenda and the administration's reckless spending. The only way to do that is to complete our appropriations work. We have 45 days to do it. Senate Democrats have not passed one single appropriations bill through the Senate floor.
Yeah. All right. So look, here's what we're going to get through. We're going to get back to Congressman Lawler because he goes a lot farther than that, and I want you to hear this. And Kevin Gaetz' ethics challenges are real. Everything that you've heard about the ethics challenges are real. I don't know if he's guilty of it, but there's a report pending right now. And here's the bottom line. If that report comes back with indications that he's guilty of any of the things that I just outlined here, they're going to move to expel him because his Republican colleagues, in large part, are tired of it. They're tired of the fight. And we got a worse bill than we otherwise would have had. At least we could have cut spending by 8% and defended the border better. We didn't get any of that. I'll be back with more.